In this video, I want to talk to you about e-commerce product selection criteria. We've looked at the optimum criteria for Amazon, and I would argue that you're really dealing with a different subset of criteria here, which is why I want to take you through them. You can look at them as a Venn diagram, two overlapping circles where there's going to be some common areas in the middle, but the criteria just for Amazon are not complete enough. And this is why I think this video is going to be so important to you. Now, to start with, what you really need is a very significant market. Now, you don't want a subset of a large market, but you actually ideally want a large market itself. And in considering the market, look at things like gender, demographics, culture, country, and the likely demand for your product within those sets of criteria. The next criteria is competition. And it's most unlikely you're going to come up with an absolutely brand new product where there's no competition. And strong competition in itself is not bad. It does demonstrate the existence of strong demand. Where we're going to try and stand out is by differentiating our product with some unique selling points and in the way we market and present our product. So looking for a product where there's high competition is a good thing. I would caution you against following trends and fads, certainly short-term trends and fads. You want a market that's got long-term demand, ideally a growing market. One way of looking for this is looking for offline advertising. See what you see advertised in magazines, in papers, in journals, and see if that gives you ideas of things which you could source and sell. Another good way is to look at Google Trends. And this will also give you an idea about the growth over time of a particular search term. So it shows you a graph of that. It also shows you the regional interest, and that can be really helpful, particularly if we know that we're just going to be selling on Amazon.com, so you can look at what the demand is like in the US. And it also it gives you suggestions for related searches, and this is a fantastic place to find keywords which you can store and then use later. Think about whether your product has got limited availability, i.e. it's something which is difficult for a bricks and mortar store to stock. And a classic example of that would be something where, although there's a substantial market for it, the market is niche and very fragmented. And therefore it's difficult for one store in one city to stock that particular product because there's insufficient demand locally for that product. You do need to have a very careful idea and understanding of your target customer. Build a profile, an avatar of them, their sort of behaviors and their demographics and their background and their income levels and whether they've got children and the sorts of things they'll be using alongside your other products. Now, a key part of this criteria is actually, do they have any money? Because if you're targeting the child market, obviously children are dependent on their parents. You might then turn around and say, well, okay, we'll go for the seniors market because seniors tend to be on the whole more affluent and have more disposable income. But the problem there may be that they're actually not online. And if they have a credit card, and children obviously won't, seniors might be reluctant to put their credit card information into a computer. So you see how these things can impact on your ability to sell, particularly to sell on Amazon. We need to talk about markup. Now, putting aside all the issues to do with the Amazon revenue generator, markup is not your margin. Markup is where you divide the selling price by your buying price and understand the multiple that entails. So you might sell for $100, you buy it for 10, you've got a 10 times markup. Your margin is your buying price plus all costs gives you your gross cost. And then if you take that away from your selling price, you get your margin. So if you sell for 100 and you've got all your additional costs of say 40 and your buying price is 10, 40 and 10 is 50 minus 100, your margin is 50. And 50 or 50%, because we've been doing it over 100, is actually, I think, where your minimum margin should be once all your costs have been taken into consideration. And that, of course, includes all the costs that Amazon are going to charge you for the FBA service, which is fine. You can find that in the revenue calculator. But it does mean you may actually have to consider having a 5 or 10 times markup in order to come up with a viable product. Let's take a closer look at costs while we're at it, because you may have to have some special branding or printing done to brand your product, and that is going to have a cost associated with it. You may have some bespoke packaging in order to stand out in the market. That's going to have a cost associated with it, and you may have to get your packaging sent to your supplier. That's going to have a cost. All your shipping and import costs therefore have to be taken into consideration, and you may well have to pay customs taxes and duties, and you'll need to make sure those are fully costed. We've spoken about Amazon's cost, and then you may well have additional advertising costs. Well, you'll want to factor those in as well. And are there any specific fixed and variable costs of your business, and I'm not talking about your time, that you're going to want to charge against the cost of this project? And therefore, that needs to be factored in. Now, in Amazon, we've talked about the selling price, and I would argue that actually from an e-commerce point of view, you might actually look for a higher selling price than the range I've given you for Amazon. Of course, the higher the price, the fewer units you need to sell and the fewer customers you need to find for each dollar of profit that you make. But at the same time, you need to balance that against the initial working capital you're going to require when you set the business up, because each item of stock will be more expensive. And this is obviously a major trade-off against a whole range of these similar factors. Now, stock variations can be a real complicating factor, because it's going to very materially affect the amount of stock you're going to have in the Amazon warehouse. And we're talking here about things where there are variants in size, in color, in gender, and any other design variations that may come into play. I would strongly urge you to try and find a product which has got a single variation, or if that's not possible, then one with very, very few variants. This will make your life a lot easier, and actually your initial setup costs will be much lower. You can, of course, broaden your range later and bring in more colors or more size variants or whatever it is. But obviously, if you have a product and it's a shoe and you only stock size 6, then everybody else is not going to be able to buy your shoe. So you understand the issue that stock variation can have. Now, consumability is a two-edged sword. You want your product to be everlasting, and we'll talk about sell-by dates in a moment. But if you have a product that is consumed and used up, it has a distinct advantage, and that is that you'll be able to sell more of the same product to your existing customers, which isn't always, providing it's a satisfactory experience, always a better deal and easier to do than having to find new customers. And if it's a consistently consumed product, it may even have subscription potential. Now, durability is an issue of how easily is your product damaged, because there's an awful lot of movement and shipping involved in this process. And if you've got a fragile product, then you're going to end up with a lot of stock returns and a lot of stock that you can't sell and going to have to write off. Perishability is a different issue. This is where your product has a limited shelf life, a sell-by date. Because if your sales are slow, your product may go out of date before you're able to sell it. And that obviously is going to cost you money. Size and weight obviously affect storage and shipping. And I know Amazon will charge you in relation to the size and weight of your products, and they offer free shipping. So it is still true to say that having smaller and lighter products is a better deal, a better factor for online products, and particularly selling products through Amazon. I would urge you to avoid seasonality. Products with high seasonality, if you don't sell them, you're going to have to wait for the season to come round again. By the time the season comes round again, they may be out of date, they may be obsolete. You tie up your cash in the meantime, and you end up with stock you may not be able to sell 12 months later. So seasonality is something you need to be very aware of. Passion and problems. Simple here, and we have talked about this a little bit. Does your product solve a problem or feed a passion? And really what this comes down to is the types of demand, because if people are passionate about something, they're much more likely to spend money on it. Hobbies are a great example, or outdoor activities, or whatever it is. They're much more likely to spend money on it, and spend money in a less considered manner than if it was a something where they're going to be more analytical about the decision-making process. The evolution of your product over time is something you need to give very careful consideration to. Because if your product is continually evolving over time, then all your other materials are going to have to evolve with it, whether it's the packaging or your website or whatever else it is, the photographs you have on Amazon. But also you're going to be continually updating your stock, which means you're going to have old stock. And if you can't discount that stock and get rid of it that way, you're going to end up with stock you're going to have to write off. Now, I would strongly urge you to keep away from products that have got restrictions and regulations. Amazon does have a restricted categories list, and I would strongly recommend that you ditch that one straight away. You don't go anywhere near that. But still check with your suppliers that your products have no restrictions or regulations, and ask the same of your shipping company, because the regulations may pertain to its shipping or its entry into the country, not necessarily to its manufacture. Licenses are a very dangerous area, and again I would strongly urge you to keep away from any products that have been licensed. Normally this means that somebody else owns the IP on the product and you need a license from them in order to resell it. You cannot be sure that the manufacturer has got the license they need to produce it, and you may not be able to get a license to sell it in the country in which you want to sell it. So be aware of that potential pitfall. Marketing is a slightly grey area, but the question I would ask you is it easy to market your product? Is it easy for you to create marketing videos and other collateral for you to be able to get out there and market your product online? Or are you going to have to bring in external parties to do this, which is going to greatly increase your costs and expenses? Amazon does provide a great marketplace, but you will do better by being able to also market your products and drive traffic to that marketplace. So that's it. Those are the e-commerce product selection criteria. As you'll see, there is some overlap with the Amazon criteria, but I really want you to be thinking with both hats on in order to make sure that you come up with the best type of product you possibly can. So that's it for this video. I hope you found it helpful, and I'll see you again very soon in another video.